I think one of the problems that come up, and I know we were talking a little bit about it before, with older people, I mean, it can be other people, but sometimes you can have illnesses where you are not yourself anymore, Alzheimer's and all the various dementia. And that can sometimes be a barrier for people. And maybe people sometimes are embarrassed, they don't know how to handle it or don't want to handle it. What should we do in cases like that?
Well, it's very interesting you mentioned this, because when people are physically ill, most people cope with that.
Yes,
but when they either have mental illness, or in the case of what you meant, dementia, where they've got their brain is failing and their memory's going, how do you relate to such a person? How can you love them? And how can you and you help them? But they're still real people. They're still people that God cares for, and they're still people that are just as valuable to God as anybody else. And yet they're often, you know, put away in homes and left. And people have got to learn how to relate to people. I mean, it is very difficult. Of course, we talk about someone with dementia now, that if your loved one has lost their memory and they can't remember when you came and where they are and all this sort of thing, and you come to see them and they don't, sometimes people lose their memory so much they can't even recognize you as being their wife or spouse. I mean, I've been involved in situations where people in a care situation forget that they were married and they walked hand in hand because they're back in when they were childhood days or something with somebody else. And it can be very frustrating for the loved one or for the people visiting if they don't understand what's happening to that person themselves and where they're at, because they can get very cross and upset if they're not actually, you know, why don't you recognize me, or why can't you remember this? And it's very frustrating for people. And I think the church can do something to educate people as well, how to minister and how to relate to people who've got memory problems and major problems.
You've got two problems there, haven't you? You've got the one which is a natural problem, i.e. people that may not be Christians, even if the person, the elderly person is Christian, maybe the family's not Christian, of encouraging them, of helping them to relate in that situation. But also, how do we help the person with dementia? You know, do we just fill them up with drugs and wait for the day that they go to be with the Lord and that? What do we do?
Well, this is a hot potato in medicine at the moment, because there's all the reports, you know, coming out that you shouldn't be giving people who've got behavioural problems who have dementia with lots of sedating sort of drugs. And I used to run a number of elderly mentally infirmed homes, as they're called. That's nursing homes for people with this type of condition. And actually you can care for them holistically. You can minister to them. One of the things that happens when someone becomes older, they lose the control of their present reality. So they're unable to control their feelings and their behavior. And sometimes they become aggressive, or they start swearing or using or lashing out at people. And people can sometimes see this as just something that, you know, is wrong, that's just the dementia causing it. And I've often been asked the question by others, you know, you have a sweet old lady who went to the church and very committed Christian, she carries on, and then she finds she gets severe Alzheimer's disease, and then she starts swearing. Never done this before in her life before. And people start saying, oh, well, that's the dementia doing that. Well, dementia doesn't cause you to swear. There has to be a reason for it. And the most behavior comes from within you. The Bible says that what's in your heart comes out through your mouth. And just because you lose control or lose the ability to stop things, when you've got dementia, you often haven't got that, so it just comes out raw. And in my experience, I've found that many people have had emotional problems in the past that they buried. When they lose control, these things come out to the forefront. And then they start behaving or saying odd things or behaving aggressively. It's nothing to do with today. It's probably something from the past that needs healing or helping. And you can minister to these people through prayer and talking to them about some of their hurts from the past. This can happen spiritually as well. Some people have had spiritual experiences which have been negative in the past. They've had, you know, they've been involved in the wrong things, and some people will call that they've received a negative spirit in their life. And then as soon as they become, when they lose control of their consciousness now, these things start manifesting. We've seen this in a care home. One particular dramatic case was a lady who came into the care home, and in the care homes I used to run, we always had a service, certainly weekly, mostly daily. And whenever the service started up, the old lady started to shout and scream and behave really very badly, and always had to be taken away. And so, as a trying to care for her, why would this happen? Why did she become so bad when she was in the when the worship started up, basically? Yes. And so the manager, who was a care home, asked one of the local ministers to come round and pray, just to go and pray with this lady. And as they prayed with her, all sorts of things started to happen. Anyway, following the prayer and ministry to her, she was ministered to, she settled down. And when she stayed in the services, we didn't have any more bad behaviour after that. This was, she had some sort of ministry to her for something evil in the past.
It sounded to me like that particular person you were talking about had some form of deliverance in their life. That may not, of course, be true of everybody, might it? And it's one of these problems where we've got to be careful of jumping to conclusions of what's going on.
Yes, you're absolutely right there. This was a deliverance situation, and if I tell you the rest of the story, you will understand where that came from, because this lady who came in, a very difficult lady, lots of behavioural problems, yes, very, very badly demented, was throwing food around, starving herself, picking herself. She was very disturbed, really, in herself. After the prayer she had, she changed and became very quiet. She started eating her food. She came off all her sedation medication. But then it transpired that one day her daughter came in to see her and sat next to somebody else in the home and said, would you like to speak to your mother? Because I'm a medium. And it turned out that her daughter was a spiritualist. Then it turned out that her mother was also a spiritualist. So you can understand why there was maybe some spiritual problems. So the manager of the home, it's a very dramatic story, told her to not that this is a Christian home and we don't have any, we don't talk to the dead here because we don't believe in that. So would you kindly stop talking to the other residents, who were most of which were Christian, about this? She then stormed off and reported the home for abusing her mother, for not treating her right, for starving her, etc., etc. And then the first thing the manager knew was they had all the authorities coming on the home. This lady was quite a famous lady. She'd been on the radio quite a bit, raising money for charity as a medium. And of course, when they came in and they inspected the mother and looked at her, this very difficult lady, the consultant psychiatrist who'd sent for the elderly, had sent to this nursing home, who was on lots of drugs, very difficult behavioural person, was now a sweet old lady, eating normally and behaving quite reasonably. And so this was after the prayer. And so, of course, the complaint came to nothing. And unfortunately, it was a difficult situation with the daughter. And but that would explain it. Now, not all situations are that dramatic and to do with spirituality. As I said, most that was obviously a spiritual issue in that instance.